Okay, so get ready to explore the inner workings of your body. Because today,
Yeah.
we're diving deep into pathophysiology.
Right.
We've got some serious medical school material for this one.
Oh, wow.
Lecture notes from a Dr. O. Clarkson's intro to pathophysiology
Okay.
and fluid and electrolyte imbalances.
Imbalances.
Yeah, so we're not aiming to turn you into doctors or anything, but
Mm.
I mean, wouldn't it be cool to understand these like fascinating
Mm.
how things go wrong,
Mm.
processes that are constantly happening inside all of us?
Absolutely. It's like a peek behind the curtain of your own biology.
Right.
And once you understand these basic mechanisms, you can actually start to kind of decode a lot of health articles that you read online, and you even have more informed conversations with your own doctor.
It's empowering. So Dr. Clarkson starts with some pretty intense vocabulary right off the bat.
Okay. Yeah.
Homeostasis,
Yeah.
disease disorders.
Right.
Feels like a foreign language.
It can seem that way.
Oh.
But these terms are really just the building blocks to understanding how the body both stays healthy and also gets sick.
Okay.
So, for example, homeostasis, you can think of that as your body's constant quest for balance.
Okay.
It's always working to keep things running smoothly like a finely tuned orchestra.
Okay.
And when that balance is disrupted, well, that's when disease comes knocking.
Disease, the ultimate party crasher.
Exactly.
And these diseases, they can be sneaky too.
Oh, absolutely.
Dr. Clarkson mentions acute versus chronic.
Right. Yeah.
What's the difference there?
So imagine a spectrum.
Okay.
On one end, you have acute. These are those sudden health dramas, like a raging fever or a sprained ankle. On the other end, we have chronic conditions, and these are those slow burners
Okay.
that linger like a house guest who never leaves.
Oh, no.
Think diabetes or arthritis.
And what about disorder? Is that different?
So a disorder is kind of like a glitch in the system.
Okay.
It means that something in the body isn't working quite right, but it might not have a clear-cut cause like an infection or an injury. Think of it like that one kitchen drawer that never quite closes, annoying but not necessarily 5-alarm fire.
Okay, so we've got these disruptions to our bodies, balance diseases, disorders, but how do we figure out what's causing them in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Dr. Clarkson mentioned something called etiology,
Right.
which sounds a bit like a dinosaur, to be honest.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But instead of digging for bones, etiology is about digging for the root cause of a disease.
I see.
Sometimes it's very straightforward, like a bacterial infection after a cut.
Right.
But other times it's a real head-scratcher, and what we call idiopathic.
Idiopathic.
Idiopathic meaning the cause remains a mystery even to doctors.
So it's like trying to solve a mystery, but sometimes we're missing like crucial clues.
Absolutely.
Speaking of clues, Dr. Clarkson emphasizes that we, the listeners, actually play a crucial role in this whole diagnosis process.
Absolutely we do.
It's about understanding the difference between a sign and a symptom.
Okay.
And it's something we often mix up, right?
Absolutely. A sign is something that a doctor can observe and measure objectively.
Okay.
So like a fever,
Mm-hmm.
a rash,
Okay.
elevated blood pressure, it's a clear observable signal. But a symptom that's your own personal experience, something only you can feel.
I see.
So things like nausea, fatigue, or that weird tingling sensation in your left foot.
So a sign is like a red flag waving in the wind,
Yes.
while a symptom is more like a secret message that only our bodies know.
Exactly. And those seemingly insignificant symptoms that we sometimes just brush off,
Right.
those can actually be really valuable clues for your doctor.
Wow.
It's like that WebMD spiral we've all experienced, except in this case, those symptoms are actually helping to paint a clearer picture for diagnosis.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the medical history, that all-important conversation with your doctor. It's like piecing together a puzzle, right?
Precisely, your doctor will ask you about your past health, family history, even lifestyle choices. It's all about gathering those puzzle pieces to understand the bigger picture of your health.
Okay, so when I tell my doctor, my left knee has been making a clicking sound since I attempted that viral dance challenge, that information actually matters.
Every detail counts, especially if that dance challenge involved questionable moves.
Okay.
But in all seriousness, all of that information helps your doctor narrow down the possibilities and figure out what's really going on.
Okay, so we've talked about, like, these disruptions in the body's balance.
Right.
But what's happening at the cellular level when things start to go wrong?
Yeah.
Dr. Clarkson dives deep into this idea of the cell under stress. And it's amazing how much drama can unfold at such a microscopic level.
It really is. Cells are incredibly adaptable. They're like tiny little survival experts.
Wow.
So take atrophy, for example.
Okay.
When cells aren't used as much, they shrink,
Okay.
conserving energy.
Interesting.
Think about what happens to your muscles if you skip the gym for a few weeks.
Right.
They get a little wimpier.
Yeah.
That's because those muscle cells have shrunk.
That's atrophy for you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a relatable example.
Yeah.
So atrophy is like downsizing your apartment when you're on a tight budget.
Exactly.
Okay, what about hypertrophy? Is that the opposite?
You got it.
Okay.
Hypertrophy is when cells bulk up.
Okay.
They're increasing in size due to increased workload.
Okay.
Think about a weightlifter's biceps. The more they lift, the bigger those muscles get. And it's not just muscles. This can happen in other organs too, like the heart.
Interesting.
Dr. Clarkson gives the example of cardiomegaly.
Cardiomegaly. Yeah.
Where the heart muscle actually thickens in response to prolonged high blood pressure.
So it's like trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of rocks?
Yeah.
Not a sustainable situation.
No, it's not a good situation for your heart to be in long term.
What about hyperplasia? That sounds a little more chaotic.
Hyperplasia is all about numbers.
Okay.
This is when cells multiply rapidly,
Okay.
increasing in number. And it's actually a normal, healthy process in some cases.
Okay.
Like, for example, when your skin repairs itself after a cut.
So it's like when you prune a plant and it comes back even bushier.
Exactly. But just like with overzealous pruning, excessive cell growth can sometimes be a sign of something else going on in the body, like a hormonal imbalance or some sort of chronic irritation.
So it's all about context.
Exactly.
You got cells shrinking,
right.
cells bulking up, and cells multiplying. What other tricks do they have up their sleeves?
Well, there's metaplasia.
Metaplasia.
And this is where one mature cell type is actually replaced by another.
Okay.
It's often a response to chronic irritation or injury.
Interesting.
Almost like the cell is trying to adapt to a hostile environment.
Like switching out your fancy shoes for a sturdy pair of boots when you know you're in for a rough ride.
Exactly. Imagine your poor airways constantly bombarded by cigarette smoke.
Oh, yeah.
Those delicate cells lining your bronchi, they decide to toughen up and they transform into a different cell type that's more resilient to the irritation.
So they're adapting.
They are adapting.
But it sounds like there's a trade-off.
There often is. Yeah. In this case, while those tougher cells can handle the smoke better, they don't function as efficiently when it comes to clearing mucus and keeping your airways clean.
Oh, wow.
It's a classic example of your body trying to protect you, but sometimes that protection comes at a cost.
So we've covered how cells adapt to stress.
Right.
But sometimes it's just too much for them to handle right.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true.
What are some of the main culprits that can push a cell to its breaking point?
Well, Dr. Clarkson calls these cellular stressors.
Okay.
And it's a pretty long list.
I bet.
But perhaps the most common culprit,
Okay.
and the one he emphasizes the most, is hypoxia.
Hypoxia, that rings a bell.
Yeah.
It's about oxygen deprivation,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're holding your breath for too long.
That's one way to think about it.
Okay.
But hypoxia is often more insidious than that.
Okay.
It's really about cells not getting enough oxygen, often due to problems with blood flow.
Okay, so it's not just about how much oxygen we breathe in,
Right.
but also how effectively it's being delivered to our cells.
Exactly. And one of the biggest culprits here is ischemia. Ischemia,
Okay.
which is essentially a reduction in blood flow to tissues.
Okay.
Dr. Clarkson compares it to a traffic jam in your arteries,
Okay.
preventing that oxygen-rich blood from reaching its destination.
So if hypoxia is like a citywide blackout,
Okay.
ischemia is like a localized outage cutting off power to a specific neighborhood of cells?
A great analogy, and just like in a blackout,
Yeah.
the longer that neighborhood goes without power, the more dire the situation becomes for those cells.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And this is where things like heart attacks and strokes come into play, right?
Exactly. A heart attack is essentially severe ischemia, affecting the heart muscle itself.
Wow.
If blood flow isn't restored quickly, those oxygen-starved heart cells begin to die.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And a stroke is the same concept,
Yeah.
but in the brain.
Precisely. In a stroke, a blood clot or a ruptured blood vessel interrupts blood flow to a part of the brain.
Okay.
And those brain cells, deprived of oxygen and nutrients,
Right.
they begin to die very quickly.
Wow.
Which is why it's so crucial to seek immediate medical attention if you suspect a stroke.
Time is brain.
Time is brain, exactly.
So we've got these blockages in our blood vessels,
Right.
leading to oxygen deprivation.
Yeah.
Dr. Clarkson also mentions gangrene
Oh, yeah.
as a particularly gruesome example
Yeah, it's not pretty.
of what can happen when hypoxia sets in.
Yeah.
What exactly is gangrene?
So imagine you have a wound, let's say, on your foot. and it gets infected.
Okay.
Now, if blood flow to the area is already compromised for whatever reason, those tissues are in serious trouble.
Right.
The bacteria are essentially winning the battle.
Okay.
They're multiplying rapidly.
Okay.
And they're cutting off the oxygen supply.
So it's like a perfect storm infection plus poor blood flow equals a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. As those tissues die off,
Right.
they turn black and they begin to decay.
Oh, no.
This is gangrene.
Okay. Gangrene is officially added to my list of things I never want to experience.
Yeah, it's not a good one.
So we've covered hypoxia and ischemia.
Right.
What other dangers lurk out there in the world of cellular stressors?
Well, there are physical traumas.
Okay.
These are your everyday injuries,
Okay.
like cuts, burns, or even that nasty bruise you get after bumping into the coffee table.
We've all been there.
Right.
But how does a simple bump translate into a bruise at the cellular level?
So when you bump into something, those tiny blood vessels called capillaries, they can rupture,
Okay.
leaking blood into the surrounding tissues.
Okay.
That's what causes the discoloration we see as a bruise.
So a bruise is like an internal rainbow.
Kind of, yeah.
With those different colors reflecting the breakdown of hemoglobin in the blood.
Exactly. And those colors can actually provide clues about how old the bruise is.
Really?
And how well the healing process is progressing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So what else is on Dr. Clarkson's list of cell stressors?
Well, we can't forget about those pesky free radicals.
Okay, free radicals.
Yeah.
They sound kind of cool, actually, like a band of rebels fighting against the establishment.
They do have a certain rebellious charm.
Right.
But in reality, they're more like those mischievous gremlins that wreak havoc when you least expect it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So free radicals are essentially unstable molecules
Okay.
that damage cells by stealing electrons from other molecules,
Really?
a process called oxidation.
So they're like electron thieves disrupting the delicate balance within our cells.
Exactly. And this damage can accumulate over time, contributing to a whole range of health problems, from premature aging to chronic diseases like heart disease and cancer.
So those free radicals are definitely not our friends.
Not our friends, no.
Is there anything we could do to protect ourselves from their electron-stealing ways?
Thankfully, there is.
Okay. Yeah.
That's where antioxidants come in.
Antioxidants.
Antioxidants.
Okay.
They act like those generous friends who willingly hand over an electron to a free radical,
Oh, okay.
stabilizing it and preventing it from causing too much damage.
So antioxidants are like the peacekeepers of the cellular world,
I like that, yeah.
calming those volatile free radicals down.
Exactly. And you can find these powerful antioxidants in a variety of foods,
Okay.
especially fruits and vegetables.
So eat your greens, folks.
Eat your greens.
So we've got physical trauma, those electron-stealing free radicals.
Right.
What else can stress out our cells?
Well, Dr. Clarkson also talks about radiation as a major culprit.
Right, like those x-rays we get at the dentist.
Yeah.
Those can't be good for our cells.
They can be harmful in high doses,
Right,
which is why technicians always shield you with that heavy lead apron.
right, right.
Radiation, in essence, has the power to damage our DNA,
Wow.
the blueprint of life that resides within each of our cells.
So it's like playing a risky game of genetic roulette.
In a way, yes, but our bodies have evolved these remarkable repair mechanisms to fix that damaged DNA.
Okay,
Most of the time, they do a fantastic job.
okay.
But when we're exposed to high levels of radiation, those repair mechanisms can get overwhelmed,
Right.
increasing the risk of problems like cancer.
So it's all about minimizing that risk.
Exactly.
So we've got to be mindful of radiation exposure,
Right.
along with all those other cellular stressors we've discussed.
Absolutely.
What else is on Dr. Clarkson's list?
Well, there are nutritional imbalances.
Okay.
Those times when we're either not getting enough of the good stuff
Right.
or overindulging in the not-so-good stuff.
Right. So it's about finding that balance
Exactly.
between fueling our bodies with the nutrients they need
Yes,
and not overwhelming them with things that do more harm than good.
exactly. Think about it like this.
Okay.
Your cells are like these high-performance cars.
Okay.
If you constantly fill them with low-quality fuel
Yeah.
and neglect routine maintenance,
Right.
they're not going to run as smoothly.
That's true.
And eventually they'll start to break down.
Right.
But if you fuel them with premium fuel,
Okay. Provide them with the right nutrients.
okay,
Give them the occasional tune-up.
right?
They'll run like a dream for years to come.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key nutrients our cells need to thrive?
Okay.
And what are some of the things we should try to limit?
Well, our cells crave a variety of vitamins and minerals,
Okay.
which act like essential spark plugs,
Okay.
keeping those metabolic engines humming,
Right.
Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, these are all great sources of those vital nutrients.
It's like providing your body with a colorful buffet of goodness.
Precisely. And just like you wouldn't want to fill up your car with sugary drinks and processed foods,
Right.
our cells aren't too fond of those either.
Okay.
Too much sugar-saturated fat and processed foods can lead to inflammation.
Oh, wow. Oxidative stress and a whole host of other problems.
So it's about making conscious choices
Absolutely.
to fuel our bodies with what they need to thrive.
Exactly.
It's not about deprivation, it's about nourishment.
It's about nourishment, yeah.
And speaking of nourishment, water is absolutely essential
Oh, it's crucial.
for every single cellular process.
That's true.
Think of it as the lifeblood of our bodies.
Yes.
Transporting nutrients, flushing out waste products,
Yeah.
keeping everything running smoothly.
Absolutely.
So we've got to stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated.
But what about those times when we experience extreme fluid loss?
Okay.
Like during a tough workout or a bout of food poisoning.
Yeah.
That's where electrolytes come in, right?
Absolutely. Electrolytes are those electrically charged minerals,
Okay.
sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium,
Okay.
that play a vital role in regulating fluid balance,
Okay.
muscle function, nerve transmission, and countless other bodily processes.
Okay, so they're not just a buzzword on a sports drink bottle.
Oh, important.
They're essential for keeping our bodies functioning optimally.
Exactly.
Good.
And when we lose fluids through sweat, vomiting, diarrhea, we lose electrolytes along with that water.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's really important to replenish them, especially during those times of increased fluid loss.
So this is all starting to make a lot more sense.
Good.
We've talked about those cellular stressors,
Yes.
but now I'm realizing that even seemingly simple things,
Right?
like not drinking enough water
Yeah.
or not replenishing electrolytes,
Mm-hmm.
can throw our bodies out of whack.
Absolutely. Our bodies like that balance.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
It's all about maintaining that delicate balance.
It is.
Speaking of delicate balances, let's talk about our immune system,
Okay.
which does an amazing job protecting us.
Absolutely.
But sometimes it can be a bit overzealous.
Right. It's a powerful system,
yeah.
and sometimes it needs a little bit of regulation.
Dr. Clarkson talks about this idea of the immune response as a double-edged sword.
It can be. Yeah, it's true.
That's intriguing. Tell me more. So our immune system, the protector, the defender,
Right.
can also turn on us. That seems a little rough even for the human body.
It's all about balance,
Yeah.
even with our immune responses.
Okay.
Think of it like this. A little inflammation is like calling in the troops when there's a minor disturbance. It helps to contain the damage and kickstart the healing process.
Right.
But when that immune response goes into overdrive,
Okay.
it's like calling in a whole army for a fender bender.
Oh, no.
There's going to be some collateral damage.
Right. So inflammation, good in small doses, not so good when it becomes a chronic issue.
Exactly.
What's happening at the cellular level when we see those classic signs of inflammation?
Yeah.
The redness, the heat, the swelling.
So imagine this. You've sprained your ankle,
Ouch.
right? Those injured cells immediately start sending out SOS signals,
Oh,
chemical messengers that alert the body to the damage.
okay.
These signals attract white blood cells,
Okay.
the body's first responders,
Right.
to the scene of the injury.
So those white blood cells are like the paramedics of our bodies rushing in to help with the healing process.
Precisely. And those chemical signals that they're responding to,
Yeah.
they actually cause the blood vessels to widen,
Okay.
increasing blood flow to the area, which is what causes that redness and heat we feel.
Right.
These signals also make those blood vessels a little bit leaky,
Okay.
allowing fluid and proteins to seep into the surrounding tissues. That's where the swelling comes from.
It's like those chemical SOS signals are calling for backup.
Yeah,
And that backup causes a bit of a traffic jam leading to swelling and discomfort.
exactly. And that swelling,
Yeah.
along with the release of other inflammatory mediators,
Okay.
that's ultimately what triggers those pain signals,
Right.
reminding us to take it easy and let our bodies heal.
It's like our bodies have this built-in alarm system
Mm-hmm.
using pain and inflammation to get our attention when something is wrong.
Exactly.
But you mentioned chronic inflammation.
Right.
That's when this helpful healing process goes awry, right?
Exactly, when inflammation becomes chronic. It's
Right.
like having that alarm bell ringing constantly,
Okay.
even when there's no fire.
Right.
This chronic low-grade inflammation has actually been linked to a whole range of chronic diseases,
Yeah.
from heart disease to even Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
It's like your body is stuck in this constant state of fight or flight,
Right.
and eventually that takes a toll.
So we've got to find ways to calm those inflammatory fires down.
We do.
Easier said than done, I imagine.
It can be tricky, but there are things we can do.
Right. But before we dive into that,
Okay.
let's shift gears and talk about those essential electrolytes. Dr. Clarkson seems so fascinated by.
Okay.
Starting with sodium. It's not just about how much salt we sprinkle on our food, is it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Sodium is the most abundant electrolyte in our extracellular fluid,
Okay.
and it plays a crucial role in maintaining fluid balance. Think of it like this.
Okay.
Sodium acts like a magnet for water.
Okay.
If you have too much sodium in your blood,
Yeah.
it's going to attract more water,
Okay.
increasing your blood volume and potentially your blood pressure.
Right.
Too little sodium.
Yeah.
You might experience fatigue, confusion, even seizures in really severe cases.
So it's all about finding that Goldilocks zone for sodium.
Exactly.
Not too much, not too little, just the right amount to keep things running smoothly.
It's all about balance.
Right.
And that balance can be disrupted by a number of factors like dehydration,
Right.
certain medications, even underlying health conditions.
Okay. So sodium is all about fluid balance.
Right.
What about potassium?
Okay.
I know it's crucial for athletes.
Yeah.
But what exactly does it do?
Potassium's like the Energizer bunny of our cells.
Okay.
It's essential for muscle contractions,
Okay.
nerve function,
Right.
and perhaps most importantly, maintaining a normal heart rhythm.
Okay, so when potassium levels are out of whack, it can mess with our hearts.
Precisely too little potassium,
Yeah?
a condition called hypokalemia,
Quick steady.
can lead to muscle weakness,
Okay.
fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
even those annoying muscle cramps that strike in the middle of the night.
Right, so that explains why I always crave a banana after a long run. My muscles are screaming for potassium.
Exactly. And in more severe cases of hypokalemia, you can even see disruptions in heart rhythm,
Really?
which can be dangerous.
Wow.
On the flip side, having too much potassium in your blood, known as hyperkalemia,
Okay.
that can also interfere with your heart's electrical activity.
So whether it's too high or too low, potassium imbalances are bad news for our tickers.
Yeah, it's not good for the heart.
This is starting to feel like a high-stakes balancing act.
It is.
Yeah.
And it highlights how interconnected all of these systems are within our bodies.
Absolutely. Speaking of interconnected systems, what about calcium?
Okay.
I know it's crucial for strong bones.
Yeah, for sure.
But what else should we know?
Well, calcium is like the unsung hero of our bodies,
Right.
beyond its role in bone health.
Right.
It's also essential for muscle function, nerve transmission, even blood clotting. It's a busy little mineral.
Wow, calcium really does it all.
It does.
So what happens when calcium levels go astray?
Just like with sodium and potassium,
Okay.
calcium imbalances can lead to a whole cascade of problems.
Right.
Too little calcium, a condition called hypocalcemia,
Hypocalcemia.
can cause muscle spasms,
Okay.
confusion, even seizures.
So those aren't just Charlie horses.
Sometimes now.
Those muscle cramps could be our body's way of signaling a calcium deficiency. That's wild.
It is. Our bodies have these fascinating ways of getting our attention when something is off kilter.
Right.
And just like with too little, calcium can cause problems, so can too much.
Okay.
Hypercalcemia or high calcium can lead to fatigue, weakness,
Mm-hmm.
nausea, even kidney stones in some cases.
Okay, so calcium. It's all about finding that sweet spot, just like with sodium and potassium.
Finding the balance, that's what it's all about.
This has been such an eye-opening exploration into the world of pathophysiology.
It's fascinating stuff, isn't it?
I feel like I'm starting to understand the language of my cells.
You're well on your way.
What's the most important takeaway you hope listeners walk away with today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that our bodies are constantly striving for this balance, this homeostasis that Dr. Clarkson talks about.
Right.
And when that balance is disrupted,
Right.
whether it's by injury, infection, or even just not drinking enough water,
Right.
it can set off this whole cascade of events at the cellular level.
Right.
But by understanding these processes,
Yes?
we can start to make more informed choices to support our body's own natural healing mechanisms
Right.
and hopefully live healthier, more vibrant lives.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
It is.
And understanding how our bodies work, both in sickness and in health,
Yeah,
is a powerful tool for taking control of our own well-being.
I completely agree.
So to our listeners, keep those brains engaged,
Yes.
those bodies fueled with nourishing foods, and those water bottles full. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world inside you.